I'm not sure how to even start this, but I'll just lay it out the way it happened. My name's Darren, and back in 2019, I was a sophomore at a mid-sized college in Oregon, studying anthropology with a focus on death rituals. Yeah, morbid, I know. I'd always had a thing for fringe medicine and how different cultures treat the dead. So when I had to pick a research topic for my cultural perspectives in medicine class, I chose black market organ trafficking and preservation methods. I figured I'd find some sketchy Reddit threads, maybe a few books, and call it a day. But what I found went way deeper than I was prepared for. It started pretty casually. I was pulling an all-nighter in the campus library, nursing a Red Bull and half a bag of trail mix, clicking through surface-level forums and archived news articles. Most of it was tabloid junk, sensationalist crap about kidney thieves in motels or some underground embalming cult in Eastern Europe. But then I came across a mention in an old forum post from 2015. Someone had dropped a link that, when I hovered over it, didn't lead to a regular website. It had that onion URL, meaning it required the Tor browser. I'd used Tor a few times before, mostly out of curiosity but never seriously. That night, curiosity got the better of me. The site had a super plain layout, just a white background, a black serif font, and the title, Preservatio, a technical exchange. It looked like a niche academic space for morticians or maybe weirdos who taxidermy roadkill in their garages. I expected technical talk, and there was at first. Threads about temperature ranges, chemical compounds, humidity controls, but the tone was cold, clinical. Not like professionals sharing best practices, more like people documenting things, experiments. I scrolled through for maybe 20 minutes, intrigued but mostly bored, until I noticed a post with no title, no author, just a timestamp and a lock icon. I don't know why I clicked. Maybe I expected it to be password protected, but instead it asked a question. What is the difference between preservation and presentation? Below it, there was a simple text field and a note. Answer to proceed. I stared at it for a while, typed in, one is to delay decay, the other is to display the body, and hit enter. The page didn't reload, it just shifted, like it peeled open. And that's when I realized I wasn't just browsing a public forum anymore. The hidden page looked different from the rest of the site. Black background, red text, no header, no navigation bar. Just a thread of posts, each titled with a number and a date. At the top was a post called Batch 36 Western Sector, dated 3 weeks earlier. I opened it expecting more technical notes, but what I found were photos. High-res, clear. They showed human bodies laid out on stainless steel tables, posed like they were being prepped for some kind of twisted exhibition. Not autopsies. These people weren't being studied. They were being arranged. Limbs stretched, skin polished, eyes pinned open. It was the kind of thing I'd seen in old anatomy books, but colder, staged. Some of the bodies were partially dressed, like they'd been interrupted mid-preservation. One wore what looked like a school hoodie, maroon with yellow writing. Another had a hospital wristband still on. But what got me was that each photo had a tiny tag in the corner with a code, a date, and a 3-letter location ID. It didn't take long to recognize that West probably meant Western US. And some of the zip codes matched Oregon, even my own county. That's when this stopped feeling like some morbid curiosity and started to feel like something real. I told myself it had to be staged, fake, sick art project maybe. But then I opened a thread labeled Supplement Field Submissions. It had dozens of what looked like phone pics, blurry, poorly lit, taken through plastic sheeting or from behind glass. One in particular made my throat go dry. It was a guy in his early 20s, maybe a little older than me, pale as hell and laying stiff on a plastic-covered metal gurney. His eyes were taped open, his lips stitched at the corners like someone had tried to force a neutral expression. But the thing that wrecked me? I knew him. His name was Eric Molnar. We weren't close, but we had a class together the previous semester. He sat in the back row of Philosophy of Consciousness, always wore this worn-out denim jacket with a bunch of stupid pins on it, like one that said, "Buy me pizza" in Comic Sans. He'd gone missing 2 weeks earlier. I remember seeing the flyer in the student union. Smiling face, last seen walking home from a party on Main Street. And now here he was, staring back at me from a corpse table, looking hollowed out and preserved like a prop. I just sat there for a while, staring at the screen, not even blinking. My fingers had gone numb over the keyboard. I wanted to tell myself it was some elaborate deepfake, Photoshop or AI stuff maybe, but it wasn't. The stupid pizza pin was there, the tear on his collar from when he tripped on a desk one morning and ripped it on the armrest. I remembered that. No AI gets that kind of detail right. That photo wasn't doctored. It was Eric. And if it was him, that meant someone took him, preserved him, like he was an object, and now he was being shared. I backed out of the thread, panicking, thinking I needed to close everything and wipe my history. But instead, something else caught my eye. A message at the bottom of the page. It wasn't a forum post, it was a system notification. It said, "New user interaction, session logged, WES43 under observation." I stared at it, heartbeat thudding in my ears. I hadn't created an account. I hadn't logged in. But somehow they had logged me. WES43, Western Sector, Zone 43. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew it wasn't random. And suddenly every flicker of light in the library, every quiet creak of a chair felt like something watching me back. I shut the laptop, almost dropping it, and shoved it into my backpack. It was nearly 3 a.m. The library was mostly empty except for a kid asleep by the printers and a janitor mopping near the restrooms. On the walk back to my dorm, I kept looking over my shoulder. Every sound felt amplified. My own footsteps, the soft hum of the streetlights, even the rustle of leaves made my chest tighten. When I got to my building, I made a detour, just to see. I walked past the campus security office and I swear I saw a guy sitting in a black car across the street with the engine running, lights off. He didn't move, didn't even look at me, just sat there. I didn't sleep that night. I turned my laptop on twice thinking I should report the site, or at least send the screenshots somewhere, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. What if they were tracking my IP? What if observation wasn't just a word? What if someone was waiting for me to go to the cops? The next morning, I walked to the corner store to buy a burner phone and called Eric's missing person hotline. I didn't leave my name, but I told them to look into the old drainage tunnel behind the paper mill. It was a guess, based on one of the zip codes I'd seen tagged on the photos. 2 days later, they found something there. It was all over the local news. They didn't release full details, but they confirmed that remains had been found. In an advanced state of chemical preservation, whatever that meant. The body hadn't been buried or burned. It had been treated. That word haunted me. Treated, like an object. They never mentioned Eric by name, but I knew. And somehow I knew they wouldn't catch anyone. There were no suspects, no arrests, no follow-ups. It was like someone had let the cops find just enough to close the case, but not enough to dig deeper. After that, I scrubbed my computer, bought a new laptop, and dropped the research topic completely. I told my professor I was switching to something less emotionally taxing. I didn't say a word to anyone else, not even my closest friends. I started sleeping with my curtains closed and a pocket knife under my pillow. I know it sounds paranoid, but you don't understand. They knew I saw. For weeks, I'd catch random messages in my spam folder with subject lines like "Session Incomplete" or "WES43 Pending." Never anything in the body, just that title. I stopped opening them. I haven't seen one in months now. Maybe they lost interest. Or maybe they're just waiting. I've never been able to find that forum again. I tried once late one night after too many drinks, and the link just timed out. The whole site seemed to vanish. But I still have the photo saved, the one of Eric. I shouldn't have kept it, but I did, just to remind myself that it was real, that I didn't imagine it, that somewhere someone is still doing this, preserving people like dolls, displaying them, sharing them in dark corners of the internet while the rest of the world scrolls past cat videos and influencer drama. Anyway, I'm not posting this for sympathy. I just needed someone to know. Someone outside that system, outside that forum. If you ever come across a site about preservation techniques and it asks you a riddle before entering, don't answer it. Close the tab. Burn your computer if you have to. Because once you've seen what I saw, there's no going back. You don't forget. And worse, they don't forget you either. Back in the summer of 2022, I had just moved into a small rental house on the edge of a quiet neighborhood outside of Dayton, Ohio. I was 31, living alone except for my dog, Winston, a rescue lab pit mix with way too much energy for the size of the yard. At the time, I was working remotely as a freelance graphic designer, which meant I spent most of my days glued to my laptop, juggling client deadlines and falling into internet rabbit holes when I needed a break. One of those rabbit holes was urban exploration forums, not because I did urbex myself, but because I liked looking at the abandoned buildings, the decay, the stories in the walls. I guess I always found something oddly peaceful about places left behind. So one night around midnight, I was scrolling through a post on a deep dive urbex thread. Someone had shared a dead link to what they called a lost archive, a zipped folder that used to belong to a group of urban explorers who'd apparently vanished off social media around 2016. The link didn't work at first, but I found a mirror version through a comment reply, and eventually I got it to download. It was a 2.1 GDI folder labeled Field Notes Final Batch.zip. No virus warnings, no sketchy behavior, just a normal, clunky folder. Inside, it had over 700 photos, all JPEGs and a couple of messy .ext files filled with coordinates, timestamps, and what looked like notes about locations. Most of it seemed like boring stuff. Interiors of malls, tunnels, broken glass, dusty furniture. But as I kept flipping through the images, something started to feel off. It took me a while to realize it, but somewhere past image 400, the focus started to shift. Instead of abandoned factories or parking garages, I started seeing normal houses. Suburban homes, with porches, flower beds, Halloween decorations. Some had cars in the driveway. Some had people. The photos were all time-stamped, usually taken early in the morning or right around dusk. I wouldn't have thought anything of it if one of the houses in photo number 466 didn't look exactly like the one across the street from mine. Then image number 467 was another house I recognized. 3 blocks down, the yellow split level with the weird steel rooster nailed to the garage. My stomach twisted. When I got to number 472, I stopped breathing. It was my house. No question. Same cracked brick on the corner, same leaning mailbox I kept meaning to fix. The timestamp? 5:42 p.m. That day. That alone freaked me out. But the photo after that, no 473, knocked the air out of me. It was me. I was walking Winston down the street right past my driveway. You couldn't see my face clearly, but the green hoodie, the way Winston tugged the leash, the yellow poop bag in my hand, it was us, no doubt. The timestamp was 6:09 p.m. I looked at the clock on my laptop. 6:18 p.m. I had just walked back inside. That photo had been taken less than 10 minutes before I opened it. My first instinct was that someone was playing a prank, or maybe I downloaded some kind of horror art project. But it didn't feel like that. The lighting in the photo was too exact. The sky, the street, it all matched the view outside my window that very moment. I felt this cold, electric sensation crawling down my neck. I slammed the laptop shut without thinking. Winston barked, not like a full bark, but that low warning growl he does when something feels wrong. I grabbed the blinds and peeked through the window. Nothing. Just the usual suburban calm, a couple of porch lights flickering on, sprinklers humming in the distance, someone's wind chimes clinking in the breeze. But the street felt too empty, like it had just been cleared a second ago. No cars, no people. I stood there for a good 5 minutes, heart pounding, trying to convince myself this was just some random internet coincidence. But the problem was, no one knew where I lived. I kept that info tight. I didn't post photos of my street, didn't tag locations. Hell, I didn't even have friends in that area yet. I was still new there. Eventually, I worked up the nerve to open the laptop again. I clicked through the rest of the folder. No more photos of me after that one. Just more houses and dozens of them, all time-stamped. All in my area. Some looked recent, some older. There was no order, no explanation. Just an eerie silence behind every image, like they were taken by someone who wasn't supposed to be there. I opened one of the text files, hoping for some kind of answer, but it was mostly gibberish. Coordinates, short notes like, "Too much noise here," or "Waited 23 mins?" Dog came out. One line, dated 3 days before, simply said, "Confirmed target lives alone. No alarms. Dog present." That was the first time I actually backed away from the desk. It wasn't a project. It wasn't art. Someone had been watching me. I didn't sleep much that night. I double-checked every door, every window. I even moved a chair in front of the back door like that would somehow help. Winston paced the living room like he could feel whatever I was feeling. Every creak, every gust of wind outside felt amplified, like something was waiting for me to slip up. Around 3 a.m., just as I was starting to doze off on the couch, my laptop pinged, a soft chime, like a notification. I hadn't opened anything. When I checked the screen, there was a new folder on the desktop I didn't recognize. It was named with just one word, Live. My heart sank. I clicked it. Inside was a single file, a .url shortcut labeled Next Session, You. I hesitated. Every instinct told me to delete it, to shut everything down and pretend I never saw any of this. But curiosity overpowered fear, just for a second. I double-clicked. It opened a browser tab to a plain black web page. No ads, no logos, just a spinning circle like it was buffering. Then the screen flickered, and suddenly, I saw a live video feed of my living room, from above, like from the top corner where the wall meets the ceiling. I stared at it, stunned, slowly turning my head to match the angle, but there was nothing there. No camera, no blinking light, just drywall. In the feed, I saw myself staring at the screen, Winston curled up beside me. I closed the laptop so fast it almost cracked. I didn't know what to do. I paced around the living room for a while, checking every inch of the ceiling, behind vents, light fixtures, smoke detectors. Nothing. No holes, no lenses, no wires. I even stood on a chair and ran my fingers along the top corners of the walls, thinking maybe something was hidden. Still nothing. Winston just watched me the whole time, ears twitching at every sound. I ended up grabbing a screwdriver and taking down the smoke detector just to be sure. It was clean. My hands were shaking. I couldn't shake the feeling that no matter what I found or didn't find, someone had already been here. Not yesterday. Not last week. That night. Possibly while I was out walking the dog. By morning, I was exhausted but wired. I decided not to call the police. Not yet. I didn't really have proof of anything. What was I supposed to say? Hey, I downloaded a creepy zip file from a forgotten corner of the internet, and now I think someone's streaming me from inside my house? They'd probably ask why I was digging through that stuff in the first place. I ended up calling my brother Kyle instead. Told him half the truth, that I'd seen something weird online, and I was worried someone might have hacked my laptop. He's a software guy, real sharp, but not the kind to overreact. He offered to come over that weekend and do a full sweep of the place, digital and physical. I said yeah, thanks, but I could hear the hesitation in his voice. Even he thought I might just be spiraling. That evening I tried to get back to normal. I even took Winston on the exact same walk, just to prove to myself that nothing had changed. But everything felt different. Every car I passed felt like it was moving a little too slow. Every neighbor that waved felt like they were watching me a little too long. There was a silver SUV I didn't recognize parked near the intersection that hadn't been there before. I passed it, tried not to look, but in the reflection of the windshield, I swear I saw the shape of someone watching me. Not moving, just staring. I got back home, locked up tight, and turned on all the lights, even in the rooms I wasn't using. I opened my laptop again, just to delete that cursed folder for good. But it was gone. Everything was gone. The live folder, the zip file, the archive images, even the URL from my browser history. I searched the drive, the trash bin, my downloads. Nothing. Like it had never existed. I checked the text messages with Kyle to make sure I hadn't imagined the whole thing. They were still there. So were the photos I'd sent him as proof. Except when I tapped one, it showed a blank image error. My stomach dropped. I didn't even feel safe sleeping inside anymore. I took Winston and crashed in the car that night, parked in a grocery lot a few blocks away, engine off, doors locked. I kept waking up to check the rearview mirror. There was nothing behind me, but the feeling that something had seen me never went away. The next morning I drove straight to a Best Buy and picked up a brand new laptop. I didn't even bother turning on the old one again. I wrapped it in a towel, stuffed it in the back of the closet, and haven't touched it since. Kyle came by later that weekend like he promised, brought some weird little device that could detect hidden cameras or signal frequencies. We checked every inch of the house. Nothing. He even ran diagnostics on my router and told me it looked clean. No signs of outside access, no weird data spikes, nothing to suggest anyone had hacked me. He asked again if I still had the folder, but when I said it had vanished, he just kind of gave me that look, like he didn't want to call me paranoid, but wasn't sure what else to believe. I told myself it was over. I wanted it to be over. For a few weeks, things stayed quiet. I worked, I walked Winston, I avoided anything even remotely close to the deep web. But the feeling never really left. It was like living with a silent alarm going off in the back of my head 24/7. I kept the curtains closed. I stopped answering unknown numbers. Every time Winston growled at the door, I froze. Then one night, I came home from picking up takeout and found a white envelope taped to my front door. No return address. Just my name, printed, not handwritten. Inside was a single Polaroid, no caption. It was a photo of me, asleep in bed, Winston curled beside me. The angle was from above, same as the live stream. I moved out the next day, didn't even sleep there one last night. Packed only what I could grab in an hour, drove 3 states away, and crashed at Kyle's place for 2 months while I looked for somewhere else. I never reported anything, never contacted anyone. I figured even if I told someone, there was nothing to trace, no evidence. No way to explain what had happened without sounding like I'd lost it. I still don't know who took those photos, or how they were watching me, or what next session really meant. But here's the part that haunts me most. I didn't see any camera in that old house, but I didn't install any in my new one either. And a week ago, I found a new envelope on my doorstep. Same font, same Polaroid inside. I'm not proud of this, but I used to browse the deep web more than I should have. It started out of curiosity, watching too many YouTube videos about hidden marketplaces and conspiracy forums. I'm not some hacker or anything, just a bored guy in his early 30s who works from home and has too much time on his hands. Back in the fall of 2022, I was living alone in a 1-bedroom apartment in Columbus, Ohio, trying to piece my life back together after a divorce. My job in digital marketing kept me mostly indoors, and I had a habit of scrolling through sketchy corners of the internet late into the night. One night, I came across a listing for secondhand electronics on a forum I hadn't seen before. No branding, no history, just a page called Reclaim Tech. The ad was simple. Untraceable laptop, wiped, cheap, ships fast, DM to order. It looked like the kind of thing I'd normally scroll past, but something about it, maybe the idea of getting a clean machine, tempted me. I ended up messaging the seller. They responded immediately, and we worked out the deal using Monero. It was honestly way too easy. I didn't even ask myself why someone would go through this trouble to sell a beat-up laptop off the grid. A week later, a brown package showed up at my door, no return address. The box looked rough, duct taped all over, stained in the corners like it had been dragged through oil or something worse. When I opened it, the laptop inside was old, dusty, and covered in little scratches. An HP model, probably 8 or 9 years outdated. It booted up but lagged like hell. I figured I'd just use it for downloads and VPN routing. I didn't realize until later that the real files were hidden behind a fake guest profile labeled G. I almost missed it. The main profile was just a dummy with no internet browser, no documents, looked like it had been reformatted. But I got curious and ran a recovery program. That's when things got weird. There were dozens of hidden folders buried deep under innocuous names like System32 video logs and HTemp render. I opened one by accident and immediately felt sick. It was filled with grainy, low-light photos, like someone had taken them from bushes, inside closets, or through window blinds. They were all of different people. Some looked like teenagers, others were older, men, women. Every photo had this same uncomfortable framing, like the subject had no idea they were being watched. Most of the images were time-stamped, but the dates didn't make sense. They ranged from 2017 to as recent as the previous month. I kept scrolling until I stopped cold. There was a folder labeled Candid 004. I figured it was just another random code, but when I opened it, I froze. The first photo was of the Kroger parking lot near my place, taken from across the street. I could tell by the mural on the side of the building. The next image was from the gas station on Main and 5th. I recognized the blue jacket I was wearing that day. Then came one from the coffee shop where I worked sometimes on Fridays. All of them were from behind or slightly to the side. None were selfies. I didn't take them. I didn't even know they were being taken. My hands were trembling. I clicked through faster. More shots. Me waiting at a crosswalk, me pushing a cart, me sitting outside my apartment building. These weren't old pictures from social media. They were recent. A few of them looked like they were taken that week. I slammed the laptop shut and just sat there in my kitchen, staring at the box it came in like it might start moving. My heart was beating like crazy, and I felt this cold sensation crawl across my skin, like I was being watched even then. I got up and checked every window, every corner of the apartment, even inside the hallway closet like a lunatic. Nothing. I live on the second floor, so I convinced myself maybe someone had taken the pics from a parked car or something. But that didn't explain how close some of the shots were. One of them was literally through the small gap in my blinds, angled down, as if the person had been standing on my balcony. That detail wrecked me. I hadn't even thought to check the balcony yet. I grabbed a kitchen knife and slowly stepped out. Empty. No one there. But the railing had a fresh shoe print on it, that was enough. I went back inside and locked the door, then shoved a chair under the knob. The smart thing would have been to turn the laptop over to the police right then, but I didn't. I can't explain it. Part of me wanted to know what the hell I had just gotten myself into. I reopened the laptop and kept digging. One of the folders had a single text file hidden under 5 layers of directories. It was named Doc Final DFTX, not even a real extension. I opened it with Notepad. It was short. Just one line. He's next. Start the prep. That's it. No other files in that folder, no names, no locations. Just that sentence. I sat back, reading it over and over. It didn't feel like a joke. I kept thinking about how fast the seller had responded, how easy the transaction was, how beat up the box had looked. None of it felt random anymore. I started unplugging the router, taping over every webcam I had, shutting off every smart device in the apartment. I wasn't even thinking straight. My mind was racing with possibilities. Was this a mistake? Had they sent the wrong laptop to the wrong person? Or had they known exactly who they were selling it to? I kept circling back to those photos, how recent they were, how close. Someone had been following me, tracking me for weeks at least. I started thinking about things I hadn't noticed at the time. A white van parked near my complex every other night. A guy at the gas station who stared too long. My porch light randomly going out twice last month. They didn't mean anything before, but now, they all screamed warning signs. I realized I was sweating. My shirt was damp. my mouth dry as hell. I had never felt fear like that before, like the world had turned just a little darker and I couldn't go back. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept every light in the apartment on and sat in the corner of my bedroom with a baseball bat and the kitchen knife. Every noise outside made me flinch. Around 3 a.m., my phone buzzed. No caller ID, just a text. "You look tired today." That's all it said. I felt something in my chest drop. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I turned my phone off and threw it in the bathroom sink like it was poison. The apartment felt too quiet, like the silence had weight. I didn't know what to do. I just kept playing that message in my head. He's next. Start the prep. And now they were texting me, watching me. I realized they'd probably been watching long before I ever bought that laptop. By morning, I was barely holding it together. I left the apartment with the laptop shoved in a backpack and headed straight to a coffee shop a few miles away, somewhere with people, security cameras, and lots of light. I didn't even look at the barista when I ordered. I just picked a corner table and sat where I could see both the door and the street. I connected to their Wi-Fi with a burner VPN and started digging into the metadata of the photos. Most of them were stripped clean, but one or two had remnants, timestamps, GPS pings. One said 5th and Lenox Cam 2. Another said APT 207W balcony. That's my unit number. My stomach dropped. Whoever had taken these knew exactly where I lived, and they weren't trying to hide it. That wasn't just surveillance, it was a warning, like they wanted me to know. I started emailing every cybersecurity friend I knew from college. Most didn't reply. One guy named Chris sent back a single line, "Burn it, don't ask questions." Another said he'd call me but never did. I think the nature of what I sent freaked them out. Honestly, I didn't blame them. This wasn't just some hacker's side project. This felt like a network, maybe even an organized ring. I kept replaying how many people were in those photos, not just me. How many other laptops like this were out there? Did someone else buy one and never find the files? Or worse, did they find them too late? The more I thought about it, the more I felt like my actions had triggered something. Like ordering that laptop had moved me from observer to target. I went to the police the next day, finally. I didn't bring the laptop, stupid I know, but I told them everything. The officer who took my report looked half bored until I mentioned the pictures. His tone shifted fast. He started writing things down, took my name and number, then disappeared into the back. 10 minutes later, a different cop came out, older, serious, no small talk. He asked more questions, wanted to know where the package was, if I had opened it alone, if I'd noticed anyone following me before it arrived. I told him about the text message. He just nodded, then handed me a card and said someone from cybercrimes would reach out, but they never did. Days passed, no one called. I tried following up, but they said it was still being processed. That's when I realized something that made my skin crawl. They didn't want to investigate this. Either they knew what it was, or they were told not to dig deeper. So I stopped calling. I unplugged everything. I moved in with my cousin upstate for a while, sold my car, got a new number. I even legally changed my name 6 months later. Yeah, that's how far I went. You know what's messed up though? Sometimes I still get that feeling, like I'm being watched. Not every day, just in certain places. Like when I'm alone at a gas station and someone's parked too long. Or when I catch a person on the bus glancing at me a second too long. It's never anything I can prove, never anything obvious. But I feel it. And sometimes I think back to that message. He's next. Start the prep. What if that laptop wasn't the start of anything, but the final step? About 2 months after I moved in with my cousin, I got a package in the mail. No return address, just my new name and the current address, something only a handful of people had. My cousin handed it to me like it was radioactive. I opened it slowly, half expecting another laptop, but it was something worse. Inside was a single printed photo. It was me, standing on the back porch of the new place, drinking coffee. It had been taken from the woods behind the house. No note, no message, just the picture. The timestamp printed in the corner was from 3 days earlier. My cousin had security cameras installed that same night, and I didn't sleep for a week. It was like they were reminding me that I could run, change my name, disappear, but they still knew. I didn't go back online for a long time. I left every deep web forum, trashed every backup drive, deleted every encrypted message. I threw the old laptop into a river on the edge of town, and even that didn't feel like enough. Part of me still wonders if that was the point. Maybe the laptop was just bait, a way to let me see just enough before yanking back the curtain. I wish I could say it all stopped there, that nothing else happened after that photo. But it did. A few weeks ago, almost a year after everything, I got a new message. This time it was a physical letter, tucked under the windshield wiper of my car while I was parked outside a grocery store. Handwritten. Short. 4 words. Prep is now complete. I didn't go home that night. I drove for 6 hours, stayed in a motel under a fake name. I debated whether to post this for a long time, but honestly, I need someone to know this happened, that it's still happening. If you ever buy something off the deep web, especially electronics, don't. Just don't. I don't care how cheap it is. I don't care how curious you are. You might think you're being smart or sneaky or in control, but you're not. These people, whoever they are, they've been doing this longer than you've been online. I don't think I was chosen at random, but I also don't think I was ever supposed to find that folder. To this day, I don't know who they are, what they want, or how far this goes. I've changed everything I could. My name, my job, my friends, even the way I look. But I still get that feeling sometimes, that there's a clock ticking somewhere, counting down to something I won't see coming. Maybe prep really was complete. Maybe I'm still on a list. Or maybe I'm just a warning story now, posted in places I'll never find. Either way, I'm not touching the deep web ever again. Not even to check. I was 16 when this happened, and I honestly didn't think I was doing anything that crazy. At the time, I was one of those kids who stayed up too late reading tech forums and trying to teach myself how to code. I wasn't some prodigy or anything, but I knew my way around a few scripts, and I'd started poking around parts of the internet most people pretend doesn't exist. The deep web. It started as curiosity. I'd read threads about it on Reddit, watched a few YouTubers show those sketchy-looking search engines, and figured, why not look for myself? I was bored, and my life in suburban Indiana was dull as drywall. My parents both worked night shifts, and I had the house to myself most evenings. That combination, free time, no supervision, and a half-functioning moral compass, is probably what got me into this mess. It was a Wednesday night when I found the forum. The site didn't have a name, at least not one I remember. Just a solid black background, a login prompt, and a symbol I'd never seen before. A pale blue eye icon in the top left corner, pixelated like it had been stretched too far. It didn't blink, but it felt like it was watching. I clicked guest access, and the site loaded a message board with threads written in half code, half slang. Most of it was nonsense to me. Long lists of software versions, bragging rights, or random encrypted strings. But some threads were titled stuff like custom job available, local surveillance, and blue dot activated. That phrase stuck with me. I clicked on it and the page loaded a single sentence. You already clicked it. I didn't even have time to process what that meant before my screen froze. Not just my browser, but everything. The cursor was locked. The music I had playing stopped and my keyboard stopped responding. Then the screen blinked black for a second before rebooting on its own. I didn't think much of it. It was an old laptop. Glitches happened. When the desktop finally came back, I noticed something odd in the bottom right corner. A tiny blue dot had appeared over the clock. Just a solid little circle, like the kind you'd get from a pixel test. I couldn't click it, couldn't drag it, couldn't even screenshot it. I tried. Every time I hit print screen, the image came out normal, no dot. like it didn't exist. Over the next few days, that dot followed me. Every time I booted up my laptop, whether I was using Chrome, VLC, even Word, the dot would always be there, somewhere along the screen's edge. I ran malware scans, checked Task Manager, reinstalled the OS twice, but nothing worked. I even went as far as wiping the hard drive entirely and starting from scratch. Still, the blue dot came back. I stopped visiting sketchy sites after that. Honestly, I got scared. I started covering my webcam with tape and unplugging the laptop when I wasn't using it. The dot didn't go away, though. If anything, it seemed like it was showing up faster. I thought about telling someone, my parents maybe. But how do you explain something like that without sounding insane? About 3 weeks later, something happened that still makes my stomach twist when I think about it. I got home from school and found a small padded envelope on the front porch. No return address, just my name, printed in bold capital letters, and my home address typed on a crooked label. It wasn't even sealed properly. The flap was tucked in, like whoever sent it didn't care if it opened in transit. Inside, there was just a plain black USB drive. No logos, no markings, just matte plastic, warm to the touch like it had been sitting in someone's hand. I stood there holding it for a while, frozen, like part of me already knew I shouldn't plug it in. But curiosity beat fear, like it always did back then. I used my old desktop to check it out, the one I hadn't used since middle school, just to be safe. No internet connection, no accounts logged in. As soon as I inserted the USB, the screen went black and a single folder appeared, named with a string of random numbers and letters. Inside were video files, dozens of them. Each one was named with a timestamp. When I clicked on the first, it opened to a grainy, low-lit video of my bedroom. My heart dropped. The angle was from my laptop's webcam. I was in bed, asleep. At first I thought maybe it was some kind of screen recording prank, but the video wasn't a screen capture. It was raw footage from the camera. You could see me roll over in bed, breathing heavily, completely unaware. The date matched a night I'd browsed that forum. Every single file after that showed the same thing. Different nights, same angle, same time-stamped file names. Some nights I turned in early. Some nights I stayed up late watching videos or playing games. But I was always recorded. I checked my laptop's webcam settings, the device logs, BIOS settings. Nothing explained how it had been accessed. I had tape over the camera for the last few weeks, but the recording stopped just before I covered it. That was the worst part. Whoever did this had been watching me up until the exact moment I started taking precautions, which meant they'd seen me find the dot. They'd seen me panic. They knew. I couldn't sleep that night. I laid awake in bed, trying to convince myself that this was some twisted prank, maybe even some malware that tricked me into thinking the videos were real. But deep down, I knew they were. I remembered those nights, the way I slept, the things I said out loud in the dark. One video caught me talking in my sleep. I mumbled something about the blue dot. The audio was faint, but clear. My voice, whispering in the dark like I was dreaming about it. That's when I realized, whatever I'd clicked into, whatever thread that blue eye symbol belonged to, it hadn't just been watching. It had listened too. The paranoia took over pretty fast. I started noticing little things around the house that felt off. My bedroom door was always slightly ajar when I came home, even though I made a habit of closing it before I left. My desk chair would be turned ever so slightly to face the bed. One night, I found my mouse placed on the opposite side of the desk, as if someone left it there intentionally. Not dropped, but positioned. I asked my parents if they'd been in my room. They said no, and they barely had time to breathe, let alone mess with my stuff. Still, I didn't tell them everything. How could I say, hey, someone might have been filming me in my sleep for weeks, and they mailed me the evidence? I eventually got rid of the USB. I didn't even plug it in again. I broke it in half with a hammer in the garage, wrapped the pieces in foil, and dumped them in separate trash bags across town. I didn't know if it would help, but it made me feel like I had some control. I also switched to a new laptop, one I bought in cash from a secondhand electronics store 2 towns over. No accounts, no names. I taped the webcam from day one and never accessed the deep web again. Still, the blue dot didn't stop. It didn't show up on the new laptop, but I started seeing it in my peripheral vision, like phantom spots you get when you stare at a screen too long. It wasn't on the screen anymore. It was just there, floating, pulsing, watching. The worst incident happened about a month after I smashed the USB. I woke up around 3 a.m. No noise, no nightmare, just sudden full-body alertness. My room was pitch dark except for the faint glow of the router on my desk. I sat up, still half asleep, and that's when I noticed the outline of someone standing outside my window. My room's on the second floor. There's no ledge, no tree, no way anyone could have reached it without a ladder. But the silhouette was unmistakable. Narrow build, long arms, standing too still to be natural. I didn't scream. I didn't move. I just stared. After what felt like forever, I blinked, and the figure was gone, like it had never been there. The next morning, I found smudges on the glass, long, greasy streaks, like someone had pressed their face against it. That was the last straw. I told my parents I needed to move my room downstairs, told them I couldn't sleep anymore up there. They didn't argue. They figured it was teenage hormones, maybe a breakup I wasn't talking about. I didn't care what they thought. I just wanted walls between me and that window. I trashed the old laptop completely. Ripped out the hard drive, microwaved it, then buried the whole thing behind the shed. It's been 2 years since then. I haven't seen the dot again, and no more packages have arrived. But sometimes, late at night, I still feel that same sensation I did back then, like I'm being watched through a screen that doesn't exist anymore. I've tried talking about it a few times, once to a guidance counselor, once to a guy I met online who said he was into cybersecurity. Both times I backed out halfway through. I could see it in their faces. That look people get when they're trying not to label you crazy. It's hard to explain something that leaves no evidence. The recordings are gone. The laptop is gone. The smudges were cleaned. All I have is my memory of that blue dot, and the feeling of waking up and knowing someone had been watching me for weeks, maybe longer. I know how it sounds. I really do. But the thing that scares me most isn't what happened. It's that I clicked something, that I gave them permission. I still think about that blue eye icon, the way it just sat there in the corner, unmoving, like it was waiting for something. I wonder if it's still there, on some site buried 5 layers deep on the deep web, waiting for the next curious idiot to wander in and click on the wrong thread. I wonder if that kid will get a USB too. Or maybe something worse. Maybe they're just testing boundaries, seeing what scares people enough to stop them from talking, and what doesn't. I wasn't important. I didn't have money or power. I was just a bored teenager who thought he was smarter than the rules. And for that, someone got to watch me sleep. Sometimes I imagine what would have happened if I hadn't taped the webcam, if I hadn't gotten scared and smashed the USB. Would the videos have kept coming? Would someone have knocked on the door one night? There were moments I felt like I was being conditioned, poked and prodded, studied like a lab rat reacting to fear. But I pulled away. I stopped playing. And maybe that's what saved me. Or maybe they just moved on, I don't know. But I can't shake the idea that I was part of something bigger, a game, or an experiment, and I'll never really know what it was about. I'm sharing this now not because I want sympathy or validation. I honestly don't care if you believe me. I just need to say it out loud somewhere. Somewhere other people might read it and hesitate before they go clicking through strange forms in the middle of the night. If you ever see a pale blue eye icon in the corner of your screen, don't click. Just close the tab. Shut down the computer. Walk away. Because once you see the dot, it sees you too. I'm not really sure where to start, but I guess it makes sense to explain where I was at in life when this happened. This was back in late 2021, right after I lost my job at the warehouse. I was living alone in a small duplex outside of Springfield, Missouri. Nothing special, just a one-bedroom place with thin walls and a weird draft that always made the kitchen smell like soil. I was broke, anxious all the time and spiraling into that kind of insomnia, where your brain keeps buzzing even when your eyes hurt from being open. That's when I started getting obsessed with these off-grid survival forums, prepping, bushcraft, bartering, anything that made it feel like I had some control over my life again. At first, it felt like a community. People shared tips about water purification, DIY solar panels, even how to make soap from animal fat. It was addictive. I went from browsing occasionally to spending whole nights reading threads, commenting, messaging people. One night around 3 a.m., I replied to a post from a guy named Crag Survivor 12, who was talking about raising livestock without refrigeration. I didn't think much of it, just another quirky, off-grid topic. But instead of replying in the thread, he messaged me directly and told me to check out a hidden section of the forum that required a separate invite. It was called The Hollow. The Hollow wasn't publicly listed. You had to enter a code to access it. And when I finally got in, the tone was immediately different. The threads were darker, vague references to harvesting and meat yields, but written in that same survivalist tone. At first, I assumed they were talking about hunting deer or raising goats. A lot of the posts had grainy thumbnails, usually of people skinning mannequins or dissecting animal carcasses on tarps in the woods. Some of it was labeled as educational. One thread was titled Efficient Field Dressing Urban Applications and had a series of low-res videos where a man in camouflage gear demonstrated how to process meat using a mannequin. I clicked on a few out of morbid curiosity, but I kept telling myself it was just edgy survivalist roleplay. Then I clicked on one labeled Wild Harvest Tutorial Number 7, Upper Limb Prep. And that's when everything changed. The camera quality was better than the others. Clearer lighting, real equipment, surgical tools. The model wasn't plastic this time. The flesh had goosebumps. There were pores, veins, muscle tension. Whoever was behind the camera zoomed in on the forearm, rotating it slightly to show the underside, and I saw something that made my stomach twist in on itself. A small black tattoo of a sunflower just above the wrist. It was faded and a little warped, but I recognized it immediately. 2 months earlier, that exact tattoo had been featured on missing person flyers all over my neighborhood. It belonged to a girl named Heather Moss. I sat there frozen for a solid minute, hand still on the mouse, not blinking. The timestamp on the video was recent, just 3 days old. My brain kept scrambling for other explanations. Maybe it was a fake tattoo. Maybe it was one of those hyper-realistic silicone arms, like for medical training. But the longer I stared, the harder it got to lie to myself. The way the fingers twitched slightly, the way the skin reacted when pressed with the edge of the knife. It was real. And it wasn't just the tattoo. The thumbnail of the video had a blurry background, and in that background I spotted what looked like a plastic sheet taped to the wall with duct tape. It had writing on it. I couldn't read most of it, but I could clearly make out one word: yield. I backed out of the thread immediately, heart pounding so hard it felt like my chest might crack open. I didn't sleep at all that night. I just laid in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying that moment over and over in my head. I thought about reporting it, but I couldn't even begin to explain how I got there. It wasn't on the regular forum. It was buried, encrypted, masked behind layers of trust and invitations. I didn't even know if I could find that exact thread again. Part of me was terrified they'd find out I'd seen too much, that I wasn't one of them. I started leaving lights on at night. I changed all my passwords. I even covered the webcam on my laptop with duct tape. The next day, I tried going back to the forum. Not the hidden one, just the regular page. But when I logged in, my account was gone. Not banned, not suspended, just erased. Like I'd never existed there. Every comment I'd made, every thread I'd replied to, all of it was wiped clean. Even Crag Survivor 12, the guy who invited me, was gone. I tried the code again to see if the Hollow was still accessible, but now it just redirected to a generic 404 page, I felt this weird mix of relief and paranoia, like someone had slammed the door shut before I could step all the way through. But I'd already seen what was on the other side, and that alone was dangerous. For the next week, I kept scanning the news, waiting for some kind of update about Heather Moss. But there was nothing. No progress, no suspects, just silence. I even walked by the gas station near her apartment complex to see if her flyer was still posted on the corkboard by the door. It was. Her face, pale, dark eyes, hair in a messy ponytail, stared back at me like it knew what I'd seen. I felt sick. I couldn't stop wondering how many other tutorials were out there. How many people were watching this stuff casually, like it was just part of their twisted prepper hobby. And how many of those people actually believed they were just practicing, until the day they weren't. A few nights later, I woke up at 2:47 a.m. to the sound of my door handle jiggling. Not knocking, not banging, just that quiet testing sound, like someone was checking if it was locked. I stayed frozen in bed holding my breath. My phone was across the room charging and I didn't dare move. After what felt like forever, the sound stopped. I waited another hour before creeping to the window. My porch light was out, but I swear I saw a faint silhouette walking away down the street. Slow, steady, like they weren't in any rush. I didn't sleep the rest of that night either. The next morning, I found a folded piece of paper shoved into the crack of my front door. It just said, "You should stick to surface-level content." No signature. Nothing else. That was it for me. I packed a duffel bag that afternoon, left the apartment, and drove to my cousin's place in Kansas City. I told him I needed to crash for a while. Made up a story about a weird landlord situation. I didn't tell him the truth. Not all of it. Who the hell would believe me? After a few weeks, I changed my phone number, deleted every online account I had, bought a refurbished laptop and stayed completely off forums. I've never gone back to any kind of prepper or off-grid content since. I've tried convincing myself that maybe it was some elaborate hoax or a sick art project. But deep down, I know what I saw. That was a real human arm. And that tattoo wasn't just a coincidence. I still think about Heather, about her family, about whether I should have done more. I've reported what I could, anonymously, sent screenshots to a missing persons tip line, but I never heard anything back. Maybe it got buried. Maybe they dismissed it as fake, like so many things floating around online. Or maybe, and this is what haunts me most, maybe someone made sure it didn't go anywhere. There's a kind of helplessness that sticks with you when you know something horrific happened and no one's going to do a damn thing about it. You walk around in daylight like everything's fine, but you never really feel safe again. I'm not sharing this because I want attention. I'm sharing it because I think people should know that these communities exist. They don't always look like what you expect. Sometimes they wear camouflage and talk about preparedness and self-reliance, but underneath all that is something feral, something way past broken. And if you ever come across something that feels wrong, trust that instinct. Don't try to rationalize it, don't go deeper, because I went deeper and I saw something I can't ever unsee. And I think someone saw me back. I was in my final year of grad school, doing a research project on behavioral patterns in anonymous online communication. Sounds boring, I know, but my thesis advisor was obsessed with this concept of digital disinhibition, so I had to log hours in these sketchy chat rooms to collect real interactions. This happened on a Tuesday in late October, around 11:30 p.m. I remember that detail clearly because I'd just made a second cup of coffee to push through another 2-hour data logging session. My apartment was small, just a one-bedroom on the second floor of a walk-up in Syracuse. Nothing fancy. Beige carpet, creaky windows, and an annoying heater that clicked when it turned on. I lived alone. No roommates, no pets. Just me and the glow of my laptop. The website I was using was one of those old-school chat roulette types. Random pairings, text only at first, with an optional webcam feature. Most people clicked next instantly or sent the usual garbage. But that night, someone lingered. Her username was BreezyGirl22, and her messages were flirty almost immediately. "Hey, stranger," she typed, followed by, "You're cute. Bet you look good on cam." I laughed a little. Not because I was flattered. It was probably a bot. But because it felt too cliché. I replied just out of politeness and research protocol, logging the interaction like I'd done with dozens before. But she kept going. "Come on, just a peek. Let me see that face." I replied that my webcam was off and it was going to stay that way. That's when things started to feel off. She paused for a long time, maybe 30 seconds, then wrote, "Fine, I'll describe you instead." That got my attention. I stared at the screen, curious. She typed, "You're sitting on a gray couch. There's a half-empty mug on the table to your left. You're barefoot, right?" My heart skipped. I was barefoot. And the mug, I hadn't even mentioned it. But maybe she guessed. "Gray couches are common," I typed back. "Lucky guesses." Her next message chilled me. "Your blinds are open. You should really close them." I turned instinctively, and sure enough, my living room blinds were halfway drawn. I hadn't touched them all day. I rushed over and yanked them shut. I was no longer thinking about the study. I was thinking about how the hell this person knew these things. I typed, "Who are you?" And she replied almost instantly, "Why won't you turn on your webcam? Afraid I'll see too much?" I stared at the blinking cursor, unsure what to do. Then she added, "You live alone, right? No one else in the apartment?" I didn't answer. My fingers were frozen above the keys. Then came the final message, short and terrifying. "He's standing behind your door. Don't make a sound." At first, I didn't move. My brain was trying to catch up with what I'd just read. Behind my door. Which door? The front door was locked. I knew I'd locked it. I always double-checked it at night, a habit my dad drilled into me when I first moved out. But that message made the air feel heavier, like the room had shrunk. I slowly turned my head toward the front door, just a few feet away from where I sat. Everything looked normal. Silence. No shadow under the door, no movement, no sound. But the quiet started to feel unnatural. That kind of stillness where your ears start ringing because your brain is desperate to hear something. I reached over and muted the laptop mic, like that would somehow help, even though I wasn't on audio. I wanted to stand up, to rush over and check the door, swing it open and prove to myself this was just some twisted prank, but I was rooted in place. Then she typed again, "Don't move, don't talk. He's listening." I actually stopped breathing for a second. My eyes darted toward the narrow hallway that led to the bedroom. Had I heard something? I strained to listen, but the apartment was dead quiet. I finally whispered, barely audible even to myself, "Is this a joke?" The reply came fast. "He likes when they talk." I don't know what got into me, but I grabbed the closest thing I could find, a ceramic mug, and stood up. I inched toward the front door, slow and deliberate. The laptop screen lit up another message. "Wrong door." I froze. The hallway behind me suddenly felt wrong, like something was watching me from the shadows. My bedroom door was open just a crack. That door had definitely been closed earlier. I always kept it closed because the heater made the doorknob rattle at night. My palms were sweating now. The handle of the mug slipped slightly in my grip. I turned toward the hallway, and for the first time, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. The sheer primal fear of being watched. I took one step into the hallway, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. My bedroom was at the end, but there was a closet to the left and a linen cabinet to the right, both with doors that creaked if you looked at them funny. I whispered, "If someone's there, I'm calling the cops." My voice cracked on the word, "cops." No answer, no sound. Just that awful feeling, like the air itself was charged. I was about to bolt when another message popped up. "You have 30 seconds. After that, I won't be able to help you." I didn't waste a second. I sprinted back into the living room, nearly tripping over the rug. My hand shook as I grabbed my phone off the kitchen counter. I dialed 911 with my thumb while glancing between the hallway and the laptop screen. Before the call even connected, the screen lit up again. "He's moving. You need to leave. Now." Just as the dispatcher answered, I heard the faintest sound. A floorboard creaking. Not in the hallway. Behind me. In the living room. I turned so fast I dropped the phone. It clattered to the floor, still connected. My eyes scanned the room wildly, and I caught it. A sliver of movement near the coat closet by the front door. That door was supposed to be closed. It was open about an inch. I backed away slowly, heart racing, still holding the mug like it was a weapon. The dispatcher's voice was coming from the phone on the floor. I could barely make out her saying something like, "What's your emergency?" But I couldn't move to answer. I felt paralyzed by the possibility that someone, something, was just feet away, crouched in my closet, breathing in my air. Then without warning, the closet door creaked open another inch. Just one. Not a push, not a swing. Just enough to make it clear I wasn't alone. My laptop dinged again. The message read, "He's wearing a white mask. Don't look at his face. Run." I turned and ran for the fire escape, nearly ripping the screen off the window in my panic. I didn't even grab shoes, just vaulted through and climbed down the rusted metal ladder in my socks, scraping my hands on the rails. I didn't stop until I hit the ground and sprinted barefoot into the parking lot behind my building. A neighbor was coming in from walking his dog, an older guy named Frank I barely talked to, and I must have looked insane. I was in a t-shirt and pajama pants, clutching a cracked coffee mug, eyes wide, bleeding from my hands. He asked if I was okay, and all I could say was, "Someone's in my apartment." The police came fast. I guess the dispatcher heard enough of the call before it cut out. They didn't find anyone inside. No signs of forced entry, no footprints, no mask, no messages on my screen. Just an open closet door and a bedroom window that was unlocked from the inside. I swear I never touched that window. My laptop had been closed, and when I opened it again later, the chat history was gone. Like it never happened. The username, BreezyGirl22, didn't show up in the logs I had saved, just a blank entry. But I know what I saw, what I felt. I didn't sleep in that apartment again. I ended up crashing at a friend's place for a few nights. Jason, one of my classmates. I didn't tell him everything at first, just said there was a break-in and I didn't feel safe. But the more I thought about it, the more it haunted me. The way she, or it, described my apartment in perfect detail. The way the messages got more urgent, more personal, like someone was watching me the entire time. I kept thinking about that last warning. Don't look at his face. What would have happened if I had? My mind kept going to dark places. Not just crime, but something else, something worse. Like the fear wasn't just about being hurt, but about seeing something I wasn't meant to see. A few days later, I went back during the day with my dad to pack my stuff. I ended the lease early and moved in with my sister across town. I didn't touch those chat rooms again. I even changed my thesis project entirely. Switched to something safer, more predictable. Sometimes late at night, though, I'll catch myself staring at dark corners or open doors, expecting to see that sliver of white. A mask maybe, or maybe just imagination feeding off trauma. But there's this one detail I can't shake. That night, before everything spiraled, BreezyGirl22 said something I only remembered later. He likes when they talk. They. Plural. Like it wasn't just one person. I tried looking into the site logs again months later, just to convince myself it was a hallucination. But nothing. No trace. The site itself was gone, domain offline. I even reached out to a guy in my program who used to hang out on the darker corners of the internet, asked if he'd ever heard of something like that. He just said, "Dude, if you ever get a message that feels too specific, you close the tab. You don't engage." I wish I'd known that earlier. To this day, I don't know if it was a sick prank, a break-in that got interrupted, or something else entirely. But I know this. Someone, or something, was in my apartment that night. Watching. Listening. And if I hadn't listened to that last message and run, I honestly don't think I'd be here to tell this story. So if you ever end up in some anonymous chat and the person starts describing your surroundings in perfect detail, close the laptop. Leave. Because once you see the mask, it's probably too late.
If you've made it this far, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Also, leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is. I want to know who stayed with me until the end. See you next time.